They say love can survive anything. But no one warns you about what happens when one of you grows faster than the other. This is the story of how forever quietly slipped away. People always talk about soulmates like they are some magical thing, like a lightning strike, or fate, or some Hollywood cliché. But for me, it never started like that. It started with a slow morning, a shared bagel, and a busted coffee machine we both cursed under our breath. Her name was Emily. She had a laugh that cracked through silence like a match, and these stormy blue eyes that always looked like they were about to challenge you to a game you did not know you were playing. I met her when I was 25, working at this nonprofit downtown that barely paid enough for groceries. She was in marketing, sharp as hell, working on campaigns that actually made people care. We were broke, ambitious, and completely in sync. We stayed up late dreaming about what we'd build together. Not just careers, but a life. A home full of plants and music and late-night arguments about movies we barely remembered. We planned trips we could not afford, designed imaginary businesses, and talked about kids like we already knew their names. It was always we. Never I. Never me. We made dumb promises. Like, we'll never outgrow each other, and we'll always stay grounded. We were corny. Yeah, but we meant it. I used to think that was what love was. Being equals. Building something with both hands, side by side. I remember one night, we were sitting on the floor of our first apartment, eating cold noodles out of the container, and Emily said, "This is going to be our origin story." I laughed. I told her we'd better make it a good one then. And for a while we did. Life was not easy, but it felt full. Even the tough stuff, scraping rent together, long hours, burnout. It all felt like part of some bigger picture we were painting together. We leaned on each other. Lifted each other, grew side by side like matched vines. We shared everything. Wins, losses, doubts. She would celebrate every little thing I achieved like it was headline news. And I did the same. When she got her first promotion, we danced in the kitchen with cheap wine and socks slipping on the floor. I told her she was unstoppable. She believed me. And back then, I believed it too. But what I did not realize, what I could not see through all that joy, was that sometimes people grow at different speeds. Sometimes the story that starts as us slowly turns into her and him without either of you noticing it happening. I wish I could say I saw the shift right away. I didn't. But the first sign, the one I ignored, came the night she told me she got invited to speak at a big industry event out of state. She was glowing, lit up like a city skyline. And I felt proud. I told her, "You're going to crush it." But deep down, a quiet voice whispered something else. I just didn't listen. She came back from that trip different. Not in a bad way. Just brighter. More sure of herself. Like someone had seen what she was capable of and handed her the mirror to prove it. Emily had always been confident, but now she moved like someone who knew exactly where she was headed. I watched her slide into this new version of herself. Networking calls, leadership trainings, fancy dinners with names I had only seen on the spines of books. I cheered her on from the sidelines. Always clapping, always smiling. I told myself this was what love looked like, rooting for someone even when their spotlight did not leave any room for yours. I kept working the same job. Nonprofit world moves slow. I liked the work, even if it barely paid. I kept saying things like, "I am just happy to support us," and "one of us chasing big dreams is enough." That was a lie I told myself because the truth was harder to swallow. The truth was, every time she told a story about some new person she met, some brilliant CEO or advisor or colleague, I felt myself shrinking a little. I would nod along, ask questions, play the part. But inside, I was slipping, like a painting left too long in the sun. There was this one dinner. She had just wrapped a big campaign for her company. I had taken her out to celebrate, saved up for a place with linen napkins and overpriced wine. She looked incredible, confident, elegant, like someone who belonged in that room. I felt like I was just passing through. Halfway through, she was talking about this round table she was invited to, something I barely understood, and I realized I had not said more than 3 words since the appetizers. And she had not noticed. She laughed at something, this full-body laugh that used to be just for me. Now it sounded different, like it was echoing from somewhere I could not reach anymore. That night, when we got home, she curled up next to me and said, "Thank you for always being in my corner." I smiled. I said always. But in my head, I wondered how much longer my corner would even be part of the ring. That was when it started. The quiet. Not between us, Not at first. Between me and myself. A slow muting of my own needs, my own doubts, my own voice. I told myself I was being selfish for feeling left behind. But love does not keep score, right? That is what I believed. So I kept showing up, kept clapping, kept pretending I was not slowly fading into the backdrop of her life. And then one day, I saw her phone screen light up with a name I did not recognize. It was not suspicious, just unfamiliar. That should not have mattered. But it did. The name was Lena, strategy lead. No emojis, no hearts, just clean and professional. But something about it stuck in my mind longer than it should have. She had left her phone face up on the couch while she went to grab tea. I was not snooping. I was just sitting there, half watching something on TV, when the screen lit up. That was all it took. One unfamiliar name. One buzz of a message. And suddenly, I was spiraling. Later that night, I asked her how work was going. Tried to sound casual, tried to fish without baiting the hook too obviously. She mentioned Lena in passing. Said they were putting together a mentorship program, and Lena was brilliant. Like next level sharp, she said, eyes glowing. I nodded, smiled, said I was proud. But I felt it again. That sinking feeling. Like I had fallen behind in a race I did not know we were running. It is strange. You spend so much time believing love means safety, comfort, familiarity. But when one of you grows faster than the other, love starts to stretch. It creaks at the seams. And you keep hoping it will snap back into shape, but it just keeps stretching. That week, she started coming home later. Always a reason. A debrief. A late call. Drinks after work with the team. I never questioned it. I never wanted to be that guy. The jealous one, the insecure one. But I was feeling it anyway. One night, she came back glowing. Her team had gotten recognized by some national board. I do not even remember the title. It was long and fancy and way out of my orbit. She was talking so fast, full of energy, walking back and forth as she relived every moment. I just watched her. She looked so alive, and I felt like furniture. I realized in that moment that I had stopped being part of her stories. I was not in the room when the big stuff happened anymore. I was the person she reported it to after the lights dimmed and the applause faded. That same night, I opened my laptop, stared at the resume I had not updated in 3 years, and just sat there. Blank screen. Blank mind. I used to think we were on the same road. 2 people, different speeds maybe, but same destination. Now I was not so sure we were even driving in the same direction. That is when it started happening more often. She would talk about future plans, trips, projects, partnerships, and forget to say we. And the worst part? I did not even correct her. Because deep down, I was starting to believe maybe we was just a story we used to tell. There was this charity gala her company was sponsoring, black tie, big city hotel, the kind of thing where valet drivers see more expensive cars in one night than I have in my lifetime. She invited me weeks in advance. Said she wanted me there. Said it would mean a lot. So I rented a suit, got a haircut, polished the only pair of shoes I owned that looked halfway formal. I stood in front of the mirror that night, trying to convince myself I still looked like someone who belonged next to her. When we got there, the lobby looked like a magazine spread, polished floors, soft jazz playing, chandeliers so clean they sparkled. She looked incredible. Not just beautiful, but powerful. Like someone who had arrived. And well, I was just trying to keep up. Everyone seemed to know her. People came up nonstop, smiling, shaking hands, laughing like they were already in on some inside joke I had not heard. She introduced me a few times, always with warmth, but I could see it in their eyes. They looked at me like I was the plus one. Like I was the tag-along. The boyfriend who peaked early. One guy, some consultant with perfect teeth and a watch that probably cost more than my car, leaned over and said, "Emily's the kind of woman who's going to run this city one day." I agreed, smiled politely, but he was not talking to me. He was talking around me. Later, I watched her speak on stage. She owned that moment. Articulate, poised, fearless. The room leaned in when she talked. And I realized something. I was proud of her. So damn proud. But I also felt small. Smaller than I had ever felt before. I sat at a table full of strangers, trying to make small talk, swirling ice around in my glass. They laughed about mergers and venture rounds, dropping acronyms I had never heard. I nodded and pretended I understood. When she came back and squeezed my shoulder, I smiled. I told her she was amazing, and I meant it. But when we got home, and she hung her dress carefully over the closet door, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the carpet. That was the first night I let the thought in, the one I had been avoiding for months. What if I am the one holding her back? And worse, what if she is starting to see it too? That thought stayed with me, curled up in the corners of our apartment, quiet but heavy. And a week later, it stopped being just a thought. Because I overheard her on the phone, laughing with someone, and I heard her say something I was not supposed to hear. It was late, around 10, maybe later. I had just come out of the shower when I heard her voice down the hallway. Light, relaxed, not the usual work call tone. This one had laughter in it, the kind you save for someone who really gets you. I stopped in the hallway, towel over my shoulder, just outside the kitchen. I should have just walked in. Should have let her know I was there. But something held me still. A weight in my chest, like I already knew I would not like what I was about to hear. No, he's sweet, she was saying, voice light. He's always been supportive. It's just, sometimes I feel like I'm dragging him along, you know? There was a pause. Then more laughter. No, not like that. He's not dead weight. Just, he is comfortable. And I'm not. I want more. I feel like I'm already there, and he's still trying to figure it out. I do not remember the rest. My ears were ringing too hard. My heartbeat drowned everything out. I backed away like I had just touched something hot, closed the door to the bathroom, and sat on the edge of the tub, towel still clutched in my hands. That one sentence, dragging him along. It looped in my head like a skipping record. She was not being cruel. That was the worst part. She was just being honest. To someone else. That night, I did not confront her. I slid into bed like nothing had happened. Let her curl up next to me like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Because once you hear the truth, even by accident, you cannot unhear it. You cannot forget that the person you love thinks they are outpacing you. That maybe they are. I looked over at her sleeping, hair fanned across the pillow, completely at peace. And for the first time in our relationship, I felt like a guest in her life. Temporary. Like someone she cared about, but not someone she was building with anymore. And I hated that I understood her. Because she was not wrong. I had stopped growing. I had stopped trying. I told myself supporting her was enough. That love was sacrifice. That I did not need more. But I did. I just buried it. And now it was starting to rot. The next morning, I woke up before her. Made coffee. Sat at the table and stared out the window for a long time. There was this quiet moment where I realized I had no idea what my own dreams looked like anymore. I had poured so much into we that I forgot who I was alone. And worse, maybe she had, too. It started small. Missed moments. Words left unsaid. We would sit on the same couch, but be in two different worlds. She would be buried in her laptop, headphones in, replying to people whose names I never quite remembered. I would scroll my phone, pretending I had somewhere better to be in my own head. We still kissed goodnight. Still said, love you. But it felt more like habit than heartbeat. One Sunday, we went to a brunch spot she loved, the kind with beet lattes and lines out the door. She was wearing this soft yellow sweater I always liked. Her hair was pinned back. She looked so put together. I remember thinking, she looks like she belongs in a life I am not sure I fit into anymore. She was talking about some podcast panel she had been asked to be on. I was nodding along, but I could hear it in my own voice, flat, like I was reading from a script. Then she said, "You're really quiet." And I just shrugged. Just tired. She studied me for a second. "Is everything okay?" I wanted to say no. I feel like I am disappearing. I wanted to say, I do not know who I am next to you anymore. I wanted to say, I am scared I already lost you and neither of us noticed. But instead, I said, yeah, just work stuff. She nodded, looked out the window, and that was it. It was like we were both too afraid to name what we were feeling, because once you name it, it becomes real. And real things are hard to come back from. The next day, I came home, and she was already asleep. She had started doing that more. Crashing early, burnout from chasing the future she was building. I stood in the doorway and looked at her. Peaceful. Accomplished. Somewhere far away, even in sleep. That night, I had a dream, a weird, blurry one, where we were standing on a long road. She was walking ahead, fast, determined. I was calling her name, trying to keep up, but my legs would not move. She never looked back. I woke up sweating, heart pounding, and in that moment, I knew something I had been trying not to admit. She was not drifting away from me. She was already gone. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally, spiritually. She was halfway down that road, and I was still stuck at the starting line, holding a version of us that no longer existed. I could not sleep the rest of that night. I just stared at the ceiling, asking myself the one question I had been avoiding. If I really love her, why am I making her wait for someone I might never become? I do not know what made me say it that morning. Maybe it was the dream. Maybe it was the way she hummed while brushing her hair, oblivious to the storm sitting just across the room. She was getting ready for another work trip, some leadership summit in Chicago. 3 nights, for panels, a suite with a skyline view. I was helping her zip up her luggage when the words just fell out. You do not need to wait for me. She paused, confused. Wait for what? I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking a little, but I kept my voice even. To catch up. To figure it out. To become the man you think I still am. She blinked. Put the suitcase down slowly. Where is this coming from? I think I've known for a while, I said. You are flying. And I am standing on the runway, waving. I told myself that was enough. That love was just being your cheerleader. But it is not. She crossed her arms, defensive now. So what? You think I do not love you anymore? No, I said. I think you love me. I think you always have. But I also think I am not part of the life you are building now. Not really. Her eyes welled up, but she did not say anything. That silence. It hit harder than any fight we ever could have had. I stood up, walked to the kitchen. I needed space, not from her, but from the version of me that had settled for being less. She followed. You think leaving is the answer? No, I said. I think staying might be worse. She sat down hard on the bar stool. So that's it. I looked at her. Really looked. I love you, I said. That has not changed. But I finally understand something I did not before. She wiped a tear from her cheek. What? That sometimes, when you love someone, you do not chain them to your pace. You let them go. She shook her head. I never asked you to let go. You didn't have to, I said. You've been quietly hoping I would catch up. And I haven't. There it was. All of it. Raw and real. We sat there in the quiet, the hum of the fridge, the soft tapping of rain on the window. She did not argue. She did not beg. Because deep down, she knew. We were still holding hands, but we had stopped walking in the same direction a long time ago. She did not go on that trip. That morning, after everything was said, she sat in the living room for hours, just staring at the window. I think we were both waiting to feel something dramatic, some explosion of grief or rage. But it never came. What came instead was clarity. I packed a small bag, just a few clothes, a toothbrush, my notebook. I told her I would stay at a friend's for a while. Let things breathe. Let her have the space she had already earned, even if I had not said it out loud until now. She did not try to stop me. She just stood there in the doorway as I slipped on my jacket. Her eyes were red, but dry now. Steady. Where will you go? She asked. I shrugged. Somewhere I can figure out who I am again. She nodded slowly, like that answer made sense, even if it hurt. I walked to the door. My hand hovered on the knob. Then I turned around, took one last look at the apartment, the tiny reminders of us everywhere. The throw blanket she always stole. The Polaroids still stuck to the fridge. Her shoes by the mat. My coffee mug on the counter. It did not feel like failure. It felt like closing a book we both finished reading, long after we stopped underlining the same passages. I never stopped loving you, she said quietly, almost like a confession. I know, I replied. I didn't either. That was the part most people would never understand. This was not about falling out of love. It was about what happens when love is not enough to carry the weight of two people growing in different directions. And maybe the bravest thing we did, the most loving thing, was not clinging to what we used to be. It was letting each other go, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with respect. I stepped outside. The air was cold, brisk. It woke me up in a way nothing else had in months. As I walked down the stairs, I realized something strange. I was not walking away from her. I was walking toward myself. 2 weeks went by. I was crashing on my friend Caleb's couch, the one that sank too far in the middle and made my back ache in the mornings. I spent the days walking around the city, notebook in hand, trying to write something that made sense. Not for work, just for me. I was not rushing to figure it all out. I was letting the silence teach me what I had ignored for too long. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was her. No emojis. No long explanation. Just, I had a meeting today and reached for my phone to text you about it. Forgot, for a second, that I couldn't. Just wanted you to know, I still think of you when the good things happen. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I wanted to go back. Not because I regretted leaving. But because that message, short, honest, raw, reminded me that we did not fail. We just outgrew the version of ourselves we used to be. I did not reply right away. I took a walk first. Down past the train station where we used to get coffee on Saturdays. Past the bookstore where she once found a signed copy of a novel she loved and nearly cried in the aisle. Memories everywhere. But they did not sting. They felt like artifacts from a life I was proud to have lived. When I finally texted back, I kept it simple. Me too. Keep flying. That was it. No promise of reunion. No thread left dangling. Just mutual recognition that what we had mattered and that it had run its course. I saved that message. Still have it. Not because I read it often, but because it reminds me that sometimes endings are not failures. They are acknowledgments. Two people, one love, two different speeds. If you had asked me a year ago what love meant, I would have said partnership. Building together. Fighting for each other no matter what. And I still believe that. But now, I would add something else. Love is also knowing when to stop asking someone to slow down for you. It is realizing that holding their hand is not the same as holding them back. And sometimes, the most honest thing you can do, the most loving thing, is to let go with both hands open. I used to think if two people loved each other enough, they could survive anything. But love does not erase time. It does not patch over growth that pulls in different directions. It does not pause life while one of you figures yourself out. We were never enemies. Never toxic. We just stopped being on the same path. And I think that is what made it harder. There was no blow-up. No betrayal. Just a slow drift I kept pretending was not happening. Until it was too far to swim back. She was not the one who changed. I was. Or rather, I didn't. I stayed where I was. Comfortable. Safe. While she became someone bigger. Braver. And I clapped for her the whole way, pretending that was enough. But clapping is not walking. And walking is what we used to do, together. If I could go back, I would not rewrite it. I would still meet her in that broken coffee shop. Still dance with her in our tiny kitchen. Still build those dreams together. Because she showed me what love could look like when it was real. And what it looked like when it was time to let go. Some goodbyes are not endings. They are acknowledgments. A final bow before the curtain closes, not with a slam, but with a quiet, steady hand pulling the fabric shut. I still think of her sometimes. When the city lights catch the window just right. When I hear a laugh that sounds like hers. When I remember the version of myself that existed only because she believed in me before I did. And I smile. Because not every love is forever. Some are just the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming.